Hi, and welcome back to my All the Pretty Horses or All the Pretty Cars series. So this is my fourth video of this series, so if you haven't watched the first three, go back and watch those so this one makes sense. And this is going to be chapter 3 of All the Pretty Horses. So last video was crazy. So much happened in our last chapter, it was intense. So, remember the police just came and picked up John Grady and Rollins. And so they're like, chilling in the car, and of course they're fighting. They're like, "Oh my gosh, like you did this to us. It was all your fault." Rollins was like that. And John Grady's like, "Boy, like calm down. It's all right. There's no need to be blaming." He's like, if you wouldn't have hooked up with that girl, like this wouldn't be happening. It is all your fault. So they're like fighting, arguing, like typical when you're like in a high stress situation like this. So eventually they get to the jail, and lo and behold, they see little Blevins there. Your boy is back. And they're like, oh my gosh, the pieces are starting to fall together. It's got something to do with this kid, who they don't even know. They just kind of met him on the side of the street. So they're like, oh my gosh, like this kid is bad luck to us. So they're kind of talking with Blevins, and they find out he did get his car back, and they're like, woohoo, and all his stuff in his car. Like, he's got his Mercedes. But to do so, he had to kill a guy. So, like, this little 16-year-old has killed a guy. So it's like, oh my gosh, like, no wonder why you're here. So, like, as soon as they get there, they take Rollins and, like, do the questioning. The boss is, like, the captain's like, yo, like, we know you were a part of this killing. And he's like, what are you talking about? And he's like, you were a part of this killing. Like, what have you done? What all things have you stolen? And he's like, what are you talking about? But by the time he's over, our little snitch Rollins here is like, oh yeah, he like agrees to it. He just like accepts the accusations, and we're like, boy, like it's not even true. But so he accepts it. He's weak. But then they take John Grady in and they accuse him all the same stuff, and he's like, nah, like I'm out of here, bye. And so they're kind of like, okay, we're not coming anywhere with you. So then the next day, they get all three of the Americans in the back of this cop car. So it's like a tight little space, and they drive all day. They're just like driving, chilling, going. And then the police like just kind of pull off, and they're like, okay, Blevins, come with us. And they're like, what's going on? And so Blevins get out of the car and they go. And then the police come back without Blevins. What happened is that he got killed. So Blevins is dead. Out of the picture, Zygen by Blevins. So dang, John Grady and Rollins are like, oh my gosh, these Mexicans don't mess around. Like, what have we gotten ourselves into? Like, the only person who would know, like, for a fact that we weren't involved, or like can vouch for us, is Blevins. And he's dead now. So they're like, oh my gosh, what are we gonna do? So they end up going into the Saltillo prison, which is like our intense prison. This is like the dog eat dog, the you're going to die in here kind of prison. Like, this is where all the bad guys are sent. Like, oh boy, you better be careful where you step in. So it's rough. But the OG, the boss, the top guy of the prison, so he's not even like a captain or like works there. He's like in the prison himself. Apparently, he's got like money or something, or he just has a really strong influence. And so he's like, these Americans, like, get them in my, like, let me come talk to them. And so he's like talking to him, and he's kind of like making deals with him. He's like, I can get you out of here, but it's gonna cost you. And they're like, what are you talking about? And he falsely assumes that because they're Americans, they got money. And so he's like, you guys got money. And they're like, no, we really don't. But he's convinced. And so they're like, no, like, well, they're going to work with you. We're just going to, risk our lives in this prison. It's fine. So the next day, Ron's got a knife in his leg. He gets a knife to the leg. And they're like, oh my gosh, this is intense. So this guy, this OG, he's got people everywhere. He's like, you say no to me, you're going to get something in return. Like, you're going to regret that. So he goes to the hospital, or like the little prison hospital, and just kind of chilling in there. And then John Grady's like, goes back into me. He's like, yo, dude, like, you can't do this. Like, what are you doing? I was like, John Grady, as if you can tell him what to do. Like, what you thinking? Anyways, and so he's like, all right, I'm gonna ask you again, you want to work with me or not? And he's like, no, I'm not working with you. Like, boy, you crazy. So he doesn't. Then the next day, he's like, oh my gosh, like, I gotta defend myself somehow. He's like, I got nothing. So he uses the last of his money and buys a knife, like, off one of the prison mates or whatever. And so now he does have no money. So, like, Prez, this boss guy, like, he's broke. Leave him alone. Anyways, so the next day, he's like, you know, chilling in the cafeteria, eating his, you know, probably nasty prison food, like little tortillas, you know, he's just chilling, eating, and he's like sitting down, and it's just him and this other guy at this table, and so he's like, this guy's a creep. He's like looking, and we all know that kid, you know, the one that's like, you don't mess with him. So he, you know, like, hood up, you know, all like hunched over, sitting all by himself. You're like, that's the kid to be careful of, like, stay clear. And John Grady's sitting at lunch with him. What? But, so what happens, it's intense. It happens fast. But basically, this guy kind of walks past, knives are out fast, you know, blink of an eye fast. Knives are out, they're fighting. John Grady's like, oh my gosh, I'm about to die here. So he's like fighting for his life or whatever. And he ends up killing the guy. John Grady killed this guy. So I guess, like, in a sense he won, so, like, congrats. But he killed a guy, so now we're like, oh my gosh, like, now you really have done something wrong. Like, ah! So, but, like, he's obviously still hurt, and so he just kind of, like, passes out. Nobody really knows. He's, like, in the hospital, maybe, who knows. He just kind of passes out, and he wakes up, and they're like, hey, here's a bunch of money. You and Rollins are free. And he's like, what? Like, what is going on? He finds out Alfonso, which is his girl's great aunt, gave him the money. He's like, thanks, boo. You know, so they take the money, and Rollins is like, that is it. Mexico is not my place. Like, I have family at home. I'm going back to Texas. So he's like, peace out, dude. I'm out of here. And John Grady's like, all right, it's time to get my girl back. And that's basically how it ends. So it was crazy. They've been in 2 prisons and out of prisons now, and finally they're like, oh my gosh, that was intense. Now we can kind of like go back to our normal lives in a sense. So John Grady has a big mission ahead of him, so be sure to like this video and then stay tuned for my next video on the next chapter. So it's gonna be part 1 of chapter 1. Part 1 of chapter 4. Bye.